Alright, we should be live, and you should be watching. Welcome to my stream, teardown, and the showcase of my mod, ThiccSmoke and ThiccFire. Uh, well, I'm just here going to try to explain to you what you can do with this mod. The name itself should give you a slight glance and an idea about what this mod does. But maybe you're a little bit overwhelmed because of what you're seeing in front of you, a huge menu, a lot of properties and settings, and you have no clue what it all does and how you can use it to make your game more fiery. Alright, first of all, let's make it dark, because it's better in the dark, isn't it? So, let's get started. Well, in short, this mod enhances smoke and fire within Teardown. It's not basically just only spawning more smoke and fire, it also simulates intensity, so spreading of fire, more so than what is already part of Teardown itself. So for example, if there's a lot of fire in one spot, means there's a lot more heat, and that means that fire should be able to spread further away, so it can light stuff across the building, for example. Similarly, of course, to enhance this fire experience, fire becomes more bright, there's more particles, there's more smoke. Well, that's basically it. It can also do more damage, and you can actually just change every property that you can think of when you're creating smoke and fire in Teardown, and that's why the menu is so huge. So let's get started with the first thing first: general settings. What does general settings entail? Well, it's basically just for you to be able to configure which key you want to use to open the menu or close the menu. You can also do it in the option menu outside of the when you're in game, in the option menu, in the mod menu, I mean. You can show UI in game, so this shows debug stuff, so how many fires there are and stuff. Don't turn this on. You cannot disable it until you restart the game. And you have enable debug. It's more or less for me when creating the mod or editing or fixing bugs. So this menu is not as interesting as for you as compared to the others. So the next one is the preset menu. Well, this is basically every property and settings you make can be stored in separate presets. So for example, I have here high edited, and this is because if you go to the, for example, let's say a medium preset, and you change some kind of setting, so for example this, it automatically creates a new preset for you. So you can always go back to the default medium preset if you think you fucked your preset up or something. So anyhow, we can delete this preset because we don't need it now anyway. So let's move on. So you can create presets, you can also create a new preset based on your name, name it, and set the description, but that's mostly not used. So anyhow, the more interesting thing is the fire settings. So there are quite a few settings here, and actually this is the root of the mod. So how does it detect fire and how does it deal with fire? The first setting is the fire detection, and then the first option you see here is the map size. So what does map size mean? This mod creates some kind of boundary around the whole map, and within that boundary it can detect fire and whatnot. So normally the large map is the preferred way, because this way you can start fires across the whole map and it will be detected. If you put it to smaller, it doesn't have to calculate as much, so it might be a little bit less performance intensive, but it also can detect less fires, and sometimes it's a little bit fiddly, but it does not always detect the fires correctly the more smaller you go, because you have these settings, so small, large, medium, and small. So I would leave it on large if I were you. Then you have the option to detect fires inside confined spaces. And this is mostly to do with the fact that if there's a huge fire, the particles will be huge, and they can be bigger than the room where the fire is in itself, so it would glitch out and go through walls and would look quite ugly. Um, so this option here is to limit the fire particle sizes to a certain degree when the fire is inside the building or is enclosed by something. Of course, when you turn it off, the fire will just get huge, and if that's your thing, just turn it off. Then we have the max group size fire count. So this is such a descriptive name, but within this distance, so within 8 meters, for example, it detects the fires, and that is used to detect how many fires there are and to set the intensity of the fires. This is also the largest size it can detect a fire in without detecting another one in its vicinity. And there's this min distance fire between fires relevant for. So to prevent all the little tiny fires to spawn a lot of particles, because there's a limit to how many you can spawn at once, you can set this, and then the spawning of particles will be at least this amount of distance apart from each other. So this prevents over spawning of particles. And then we have the detection rate. So every second now it detects a new fire. Of course you can set it to like really small numbers, and it's almost like every frame. I would leave it to, if you want to moving objects to be lit on fire, you really need to split it lower. But I would set it to 1, because it doesn't affect helps performance quite a lot. Because if you set it to like 0.1 or 0.11 or 0.0.1, then of course it takes a lot more processing power to detect fires. Then we have the fire intensity menu. It simulates the fire intensity, so it detects how many fires are in the close vicinity, and that's what this max group size fire count is for. And the amount just determines how many fires there are. So I would say leave this on so to get a little bit more dynamic fires and smoke generation. Moving on, there's the fire intensity multiplier. So if you put it on 1, it doesn't normally not really hit the 100% mark. So if you like the really big intensive fires, I would say set it at 2, because then it will actually be able to detect a maximum of 100% intensity, for example. And of course, if you don't want to start with really tiny fires, you can set a minimum intensity as well. Fire spread, so there are the 2 properties from teardown itself, so you can set the max fires and the fire spread of the teardown fire simulation itself. And you can set the max fires detected, so how many fires can be detected at once, and the spread distance. So these 2 are from teardown itself, it says teardown in front of it, and the 2 below are integrated in the mod itself. So at most 50 fires are detected by the mod and handled as such, and the spreading distance between each fire is at maximum 1 meter. So if, for example, I put this to 20 at 100% intensity rate, it will spread like to buildings 20 meters across. So that's how you should see it. Of course, this is the low preset, so it's quite low, because otherwise the fire would spread quite rapidly and far. And this contains the fire spread a little bit. And then we have to trigger fire reaction time. This is, I should have updated this description, but it is randomized, so the maximum time before a fire can spawn another fire, for example, the spread, is 30 seconds in this case. You can set it to lower or high, but it's randomized, so it's not static. And then we have the additional option to actually simulate the additional fire spreading is spawn fire or not. So if you enable this, it will spawn additional fire to simulate additional fire spreading. Again, low preset, so this is off to prevent hogging your system resources. Alright, the next option is fire damage. In this preset, low preset is turned off, because the more damage you do, the more damage is done to buildings, the more heavier the damage, the bigger the frame rate drop. So it's disabled here. And you can set how much damage it does to soft materials, medium materials, hard materials, and such. The mod is quite smart, so you cannot do more damage to medium and then to soft, so it increases the soft as well, and similarly it decreases if you do this as well. So it's smart enough to deal with that. But this doesn't do anything without turning on fire damage. And if you like really stupid stuff, unrealistic stuff maybe. Explosive fire. Every new fire that's being triggered, it will explode literally. It's quite fun to play around with. But again, so those are the settings for the fire damage part. And then we have something that's quite unique and not done in Teardown at all, is simulating fire suit. So this mod does a really crude simulation of where smoke glazes, or I'm not really sure that this is the correct word for it, but it hits the objects in the near vicinity, so when it rises up and for example walls and ceilings, and it will create like some kind of suit deposit onside the wall, and it looks like there's fire inside if it's been if the fire has been put out, for example. I will turn it on for the full immersion, but then again it's additional processing, so on the low preset it's turned off. I will go over the presets, what they do in a minute. And then we have of course debugging, so you can visualize the fire detection itself, but again do not turn this on because it's not really useful for you. It's purely meant for me as the mod creator to debug stuff or improve. Right, the next menu, wind settings. Like you might be thinking, what the hell does wind settings do in a fire and smoke simulation mod? Well, it basically makes fire look better. As you can see, I have fire. You can actually see it. There are those wires in this map. This changes like the overall wind across the whole map. So it simulates, and this causes the wind smoke particles and fire particles to move with the wind, so it looks more realistic. So as you can see, I can probably change it here, and you can set the direction and do any stuff. And you can randomize it if you like to make it more less static, but I'll leave it on this because this is really strong and this is just about realistic. So there's a light breeze going across the map right now. Alright, then light settings. This is also a very interesting addition to this mod compared to the original fires in Teardown. Of course, the additional fire spawns should also create more light, because more fire is more light, and this is what this setting can do for you. There are multiple properties here. Of course, the enable light is turned off in the low preset because it hogs resources. It's really resource intensive, so only do this if you have a high-end PC. You can simulate light flickering, so fire is not a static light source, so it flickers. So you can set intensity here. You can set the brightness here, and one is like it burns your eyes out of your eye socket. So leave it at the default settings, but it's fun to play around with. And you can change the fire color offset. So this is a really bit weird for you maybe, but later on when we go to the settings of smoke and fire materials, the light color, this fire color is the light color of the fire is based on the fire materials. So and in there you can tweak the actual color. But of course, sometimes the color of the fire should not one-to-one map to light, so you can apply an offset to the color here to make it look a little bit different. Continuing on, we have the particle spawn settings. Now we go into the actual particle part of the mod. So this is interesting. This is not perfect by any means, I should say that up front, but this setting here allows weaker systems to adjust the amount of particles that are spawned depending on the frame rate you're getting. So if for example a lot of particles are spawned and your frame rate takes a dive into the ground, it can adjust the amount of particles that are spawned until it hits its threshold and then spawn more again, and on and off. And you can set the aggressiveness here, and you can set the FPS target and the maximum FPS refresh rate. So this is tied to your frame rate. So if this is at 60, for example, if you put everything at 60, it will spawn every frame a new particle times the amount of fires. And if, for example, you put it to 15, if there's already so many particles that your system is hogging down, then it says like, okay, so we should go down to at least one particle every 4 frames. So to give you an idea how this works. Of course, this isn't perfect because it can yo-yo bounce between those ranges. So suddenly there's a lot of particles and suddenly there are almost none if you set this too large. But it should at least help with the playability of the mod. And then we have the particle settings. For example, maybe you only want additional smoke, so you can disable the fire particles. And there's a lot more stuff. So it also spawns ash particles, so like little bits of debris falling down places that are on fire, which is quite fun. It's turned all on because immersiveness, and you can set the ratio to how many particles should be spawned from each type compared to smoke. So smoke is the basis here. That's also the starting of the name. So if you have like one smoke particle, every two smoke. Sorry, I say this wrongly. So every 2 smoke particles, 1 fire particle will be spawned, and every 60 smoke particles, 1 ash particle will be spawned. And that's also related to the frame rate control. So if, like for example, 60 times a second, or every frame a smoke particle spawned, every odd frame a fire particle spawned. So this can help limiting in limited performance scenarios as well, because otherwise, if you do all at once, there's a lot of particles suddenly at once. So you can tweak this to be more to your liking if you want to. Alright, continuing on. This is getting quite long, but it's a lot of settings. We have just general particle settings, so not the spawning of particles, but particles themselves. And this is in general because you can go more in depth with per material when we go there later on. So we have the general settings first. You have the intensity. So this means this is from the really beginning of the mod when I first started out. So if you set it to potato PC, the intensity can never go above 25%, I believe. And somewhat okay, it goes 50. This is fine, it goes to 75, and Find PC is 100%. So I would suggest to just use material property, because otherwise your fire would look really static, and that goes for the drag and gravity of all the particles as well. You don't actually want to touch these, so I might remove them in the future, so don't use these. Then we have the lifetime multiplier. This is quite an interesting one, because again, this goes across all particles spawned. Every particle has a lifetime in game, so if you set it to 8 seconds for smoke, for example, pardon me, the smoke particle will last 5 seconds after spawn. So, 8 seconds, whatever I said just now. But if you wanted to be spawned twice as long, you can set it to 2 times, or 4 times, or 8 times, or 60 times. But this goes for fire smart particles as well, and ash particles as well, if I'm correct. It's been a while since I implemented this. So lifetime, just leave it at 1, and this should be tweaked per material, which I will go over later on. Alright, so we have the intensity modifier. So besides the multiplier we already have in the fire settings, we can do an additional multiplication here. So if you just don't want to mess with the intensity itself, and you want to adjust how the particles look, you can just use the intensity modifier into the particle settings. There we have the particle randomness. So this means how much it can deviate from the intensity, basically. So to make the fire more lively, it can go between minus 15 or plus 15, depending on the value here. So this is a little bit confusing maybe, but so this range can be used to deviate between when spawning particles. So if you don't know what this does, just leave it alone, or just play around with it and see what it does, and if it's to your liking or not. You can always go back. And then we have the particle location randomness. So normally we have one point at which we start spawning particles, but if they are small, but there's a lot of them you want to spawn at once, you can deviate the particle location a little bit randomly, and this causes the particles to be spread more around the fire, so it looks bigger in that sense. Again, play with it until you find something that you like. And then we have the particle duplicator. Again, if you want to go ham and you want as many particles as possible, you can say instead of 1 smoke particle per frame, you can say 2, or whatever you set this to, and it will become huge. Alright, so that's the general settings, apply to all particles. Then we can go to in more specifics for fire, for examples. Fires, of course, besides the fire particles, you can spawn ember particles, but depending on how what you like, you can set it to high or off or low. There's not much else you can set here, but this randomly, depending on what setting you use here, there's a fire ember particle spawned instead of a fire particle, so it simulates embers. Then we have the fire fade in and fade out. So this determines the moment it spawns if the fire particles would fade in existence and fade out in existence. So this percentage of the lifetime it fades out. So after 95% of its lifetime of 96, it will fade out if you set it to this. And then you can set the fire emissiveness, so the particles emissiveness when spawned. Then we have the smoke particles, like fire particles. This time we have only smoke fade in and smoke fade out, but it does exactly the same. And we have the ash particles, and these are a little bit these are a lot of options. Well, you can actually change just all these properties and specific for the ash value. So the lifetime, how long the ash should exist after the fire. The gravity pull on it, because if ash falls down, you can set it to minimum 16 and maximum 40. Minus means dropping down. Of course, this is randomized, so it doesn't look static. The rotational speed of the particles, max and minimum, so it randomizes between those. I probably should set it to slower actually, but anyhow. And then with the stickiness, so how much does it stick to the walls and to the ground? Again, between max and maximum and minus values, and the drag it causes on other particles around it, and the size, of course. So, and there's an E in front, so let's actually move out. So that's what these settings do, and you will see in the following menus that these will be repeated quite often. So, the fire materials, almost to the end. Of course, fire can exist. Fires can burn multiple materials, and those cause different types of fire. So you can tweak every type of material here and the type of fire that it generates. So the basic settings, such as the color, red, green, and blue values, you can set between those materials. You can set the transparency of this fire particle spawned on fire for those materials. The lifetime of the fire particle, the gravity, speed, and they explain themselves really. So just have fun and play around with these, I would say, until you find something funky. You can also set them to really random colors, and then it would look really funky. Same for smoke. They are not coupled to the fire materials, because who knows what type of smoke you like. So you can change all those settings. So that's basically it. Maybe I should go over the presets for what type of presets come with per default with the mod. So let's clear all the presets. So these are the default presets. So you have the low, which we were on just now, and these and it's the lowest of low preset. You have the medium preset, which does a little bit more, adds lightning here and there, spawns a little bit more particles, and then high and ultra go balls. So these are just for when your PC can really handle it, and even then it's ultra, and ultra should only be used for whenever you use the built-in recorder and teardown to record time lapses, for example, because this will slow down your frame rate like into the 10s or 5 FPS if the fire gets huge. It's fun to watch, but yeah, you get the idea. And then we have the Slippery Gypsy preset, because one of the YouTube content creators for Teardown that creates nice time lapses asked for a really extreme preset, and I wouldn't recommend to use it. It's like balls to the walls preset. Anyhow, let's start at the low presets and see what it does. We can finally start a fire. So I really like this map for its, well, huge life for fires, buildings, whatever I can say anymore. And my headset is about to die. So I will add. I can already see that spawning a bit of smoke, and there's ash and burning ash, so small particles falling to the ground. So I have to put on my headset. So particles spawning, and the fire's getting quite big already. It's oozing outside. Alright. So this is what the low preset does. It spawns quite a large fire. There's quite a lot of fire here already. There's not too much smoke. I don't believe this should be here, but okay. Anyhow. So this is what the low preset looks like. And if I enable the medium preset, you would see an immediate change. So if I do this, look at that. Now there's a real proper fire going on here. There's at least lights. It's still tame compared to the other preset, which you will see in a minute. Frame rate is decent, not perfect. But it's quite decent to watch. So, looks cool. Let's go to the high preset. And this shoots. Go mad. It takes a bit to instantiate. The other side of the building is also burning quite a lot. I really like the high preset because it's the best balance of everything. And the frame rate is still quite decent looking. I mean, it's low 30s, yes, but still playable. Alright, but now the big kicker. That's a lot of smoke. And a lot of fire. And the frame rate doesn't like it. And of course we have the balls to the walls. Which actually isn't that much different from Ultra these days. Right, and now we go back to low, and then you will see actually what the difference really is. Of course, the original particles have to clear up before the frame rate returns to its normal. Actually, the fire just turned, just gone. You can see there's still the hash particles lasting. Wasn't actually really. They turned to grayish. Anyhow, if I put it to medium and high again. Well, you can also see now the. Let's make it day again. You can see that there the building looks charred. So that's the suit simulation kicking in. Alright, let's continue burning this building. So we're still now on the medium preset, so as you can see, the fire going out means that the fire spreading of the medium preset is just not far enough to keep the fire going. Actually see what it detects and how it's reacting to the fires. So the intensity is now at 25%. Mostly also because the fire is inside. If I disable that, it will go up. Tested my own mod during the demonstration. some fires are outside. Oh yeah, there it is. So if I go to the higher preset now, a lot more smoke and fire should be start spawning. Yeah. That's some proper smoke. I would like some more embers, so I go to particle settings, fire. There we go. We have more of those embers particles. Make it night again. These ash-like embers that are falling down. Yeah, I like this. The high preset is the best in my opinion. They are opinionated, I should say, so of course the high preset is something I have created on my own, and that means that it might not be to your exact liking. So you can actually see the particle refresh rate jumping up and down depending on the frame rate. And if I disable that, that's something interesting to see and show you maybe. So if I put that off, you can see there's a lot more particles spawned at once. That's a lot more consistent in that sense. Let's see, do I have the... particle spawner? So now we have 1-to-1 spawnage of fire particles. Which also looks better. But again, it's hogging my system resources quite a lot. So yeah, that's basically what this mod does. The video will be up, will be a bit longer than this, because I will be playing around with it a bit. Or the light settings might also be fun to play around with. So, let's say, go bright. That's really bright, isn't it? Let's go. That's a lot of flicker. Maybe that's not high. So. That actually looks really cool. I like it. Oh, explosive fires. Explosive fires. We should play with explosive fires. Cool. Alright, let's disable it again. As you can see, the fire doesn't stay that large if it's getting smaller. Getting calls, just a moment. Yeah, I'm back again. And I have to go, because there's some really delicious stuff waiting for me. So let's put something on fire that will be quite interesting to put on fire. Before I do that, to make it even more interesting, I'm gonna set the fire spread to be huge. So this should put a lot of things on fire maybe. I'm not really sure if this will cause more fire for this. Might continue on fire. Just in case, I will put this building on fire as well. So, blowtorch. Cool. And I will leave it at this, and I will be back in a minute. But you just keep enjoying the fire. Ben ik weer. Blijkbaar vuur... Holy shit, oké. Down entirely. Actually, I do have fire trucks, do I not? Firefighter mod. There we go. I do, I put the lifetime. To be a little bit more realistic, but and of course we also have the bottom settings, fire fade outs. This is actually quite a cool photo. I just wanted to make it. Make it real dark, maybe. Bloom it up. Ah, it's too much bloom. Depth of field can turn off all the way. That's a huge fire. Policy route? That's a lot of damage. T-bus. Oh god, this thing has to put this one on fire. That's crazy. This part is entirely fine, right? There's nothing else on fire? Nope. It's cool. Do I still have the explosion mod turned on? No, I don't. Okay. Alright, what shall we put on fire next? Something small? Not really sure what should be burned next.
Наш президент страну поднял.
ThiccFire.
Желтое и коричневое. Лучшие напитки для патриотов. Со следующей недели принимаем только доллары, кровь и органы. Вход в магазин только с ковидным паспортом.
Желтое и коричневое. Лучшие напитки для патриотов. Новинка. Метиловые коктейли.
See how big this fire can get.
Открывают днище и срывают все клапаны. Со вкусом клюквы, пепла, вишни, бобровой желчи. Эскандер. Пьем где хотим. Напоминаем, что согласно поправкам...
Cool. Apparently there was something like gasoline stored in there or something. Look, it's so intense it started to light up oil of the building on fire 20 meters away. How can this happen? That building is fun. That building is really, really fucking fun. Let's go to a fire truck. We have to walk all the way there because there's no cell phones here. Love the Sailor Moon on the wall there. That's so loud. Actually quite funny that if you're far away enough, the particle spawn don't lag as much. If I look at it, you can see it in the distance. Well, that's a huge fire. Oh no. Let's see if the people are... if there's still people in the building. Oh no. Break that. sure. I think I need something here. I'd have it on. So I should be safe, right? Huge hole there, okay. He's still on. I think the fire might be out. Yeah, this is unsavable. Do you want to see something funny? It's pretty. It's laggy. I believe this sidewall was just really flammable. Nice. We saved half of the building. Car's still okay. Nice. It's a bit charred, but it's okay. Nice. Alright, I think I will end this video right here. It's been fun. Might do it another time, maybe. So that's about it.